All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Torah Studies Parshas Vayetze. The topic of today's discussion is arguing effectively. There's all kinds of ways of argument. As a matter of fact, as we speak, we have the competition, the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and I don't know if something tells me that they will have a little more views than our class, but who knows? But in any case, the topic today is about what does it mean arguing effectively. There is arguments that can be effective arguments, that you respect one another, and then there is arguments that you just want to prove your point. You don't consider the other point. You don't care what the other person says. And so this class today is going to be different than other classes. We're going to focus on the Rashi. There are many talks from the Rebbe. In 1965, the Rebbe started a series of teaching, learning the Rashi. Rashi is, of course, the famous commentator on the Chumash, on the Torah, and the Talmud as well. But it's not just like any other commentator. This is the most accepted commentary on the Torah, literal understanding of the Torah. And the Rebbe throughout the years spoke hundreds of talks about explaining different Rashis, and he actually taught us that how deep and how profound the teachings of Rashi and the Torah is. And based on the Rebbe's teachings, he also guided us that we can find the rules of how does Rashi approach the understanding of a particular verse. And there are many rules. There's a book called Klali Rashi, the rules of Rashi, that is based on the Rebbe's teaching. And among the rules also, there's, in addition to the simple understanding, there is also the inner meaning. In Rashi, our sages say that the Rashi has his teachings based not just on the simple understanding of the Torah, but also there is the mystical teachings in the Torah. The Alter Rebbe calls it Yeina Shel Torah, the wine of the Torah. Just like wine brings out you squeeze out the grapes and bring out the wine the wine represents the secret of the Torah. It says Nichnas Yain Yotza So, the wine comes in, the secret comes out. So the same thing, this represents the depth of the Torah. There is messages within Rashi as well. So we're going to, obviously in one talk we cannot cover all of the rules of how Rashi teaches, but we'll talk about a few simple rules, what the Rebbe guides us, what we find in the Rashi, and based on these rules we will we'll talk about a verse in the Torah, in this fixed Torah portion, that talks about disputes. So let's see inside. Let's look inside. Okay, so here the rules that we're going to cover today. Well, the rules in Rashi. One rule is Rashi's interpretation of the Torah was written exclusively for the 5-year-old. Rashi himself mentions this. He says, "Ani libasi ella lipshute shel mikra." Simple. The 5 years old, the Mishnah says, "Ben chamish lemikra." The 5 years old learns the mikra, the written law, the chumash. So Rashi says, I am simply coming to explain the simple understanding that a 5-year-old should understand, to explain the plain meaning of the verse. Rule number 2, so accordingly, Rashi addresses every question that could possibly come up on the plain meaning of the verse. So if you read a verse and something doesn't make sense, Rashi would explain it. Now, if Rashi doesn't explain this, now Rashi does not have an explanation on every verse, obviously. So it says in an event that Rashi is silent about what seems to be a simple question, so there's two options. It's either because he feels it's not a question that would bother a 5-year-old. It's not, in the simple understanding, nothing is missing. Or because he already told us something earlier that addresses that question. Okay? So that's the rule number 3. If Rashi doesn't talk about a question, it's either not a question or Rashi already mentioned something before, which based on this, that question is answered. And the rule number 4, what we said before, is that Rashi's words contain also the wine of the Torah, ideas and messages from the Kabbalistic Hasidic world of Torah. So now we can go to the reading in this week's Torah portion, and we will examine one commentary that Rashi says. And the Torah says in this week's Torah portion, Parashat Teitze, says, "Ki yariv bein anoshim v'nigshu lamishpat u'shvatim." If there's a quarrel between people, and they approach the tribunal, and the judges judge them, and they acquit the innocent one, and they condemn the guilty one. Then the Torah says, and if it shall be, if the guilty one has incurred the penalty of lashes, that the judges shall make him lean over and flog him in front of him, commensurate with his crime in number. And then it says, verse number 3, and he shall flog him with 40 lashes. He shall not exceed, lest they give him a much more severe flogging than these 40 lashes, and your brother will be degraded before your eyes. So that's what the Torah says, that you cannot, when you give the lashes, you have to be careful. You have to make sure, as the Mishnah tells us, you have to be examined by a doctor to see if he can receive the lashes. Of course, today we don't have this kind of punishment, these lashes. Although they do it symbolically, there is a concept of the day before Yom Kippur, they put you down and they give you symbolic lashes in case we deserve this. So, in any case, the problem in this verse is not so much what Rashi said, but what Rashi does not say. And we are talking about the very first verse. The very first verse seems to be superfluous. It seems to be extra. What is it saying? If there's a quarrel between people and they approach a tribunal and the judges judge them and they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one, is that something that the Torah has to tell us? We all know that what the judges are supposed to do. Why does the Torah come and tell us here, v'yitzdiku tzaddik v'yashiru rasha, they will acquit the righteous one, the innocent one, they condemn the guilty one? And Rashi doesn't say anything. So again, as we said, if the Torah says something and there is a question that comes to mind and Rashi does not explain, that means one of the two. Either the question is no question, Rashi doesn't feel that it's a question, or Rashi already mentioned something earlier and that explains that question. And here is what the Rebbe tells us. The Rebbe tells us that we have to look not very far away. We look just a few verses before. Rashi says like this. On the verse, the Torah says, Ki yeh riv bein anashim, if there will be a quarrel between two people. Rashi quotes this verse from the Torah and he expands on it. It says, if there is a quarrel, they will eventually go to court. We learn from this that peace cannot result from quarrel. You have a fight, it will not result in peace. And he brings an example, and he says, just think, what caused Lot to leave the righteous man Abraham? Clearly, it was a quarrel. You know the story with Lot and Abraham. The quarrel was actually not between Lot and Abraham, it was between their servants. Ben Royei Mikne Lot, Royei Mikne Avram, the shepherds of the Lot were quarreling with the shepherds of Abraham. As Rashi tells us there, the quarrel was about the land that they took their flocks, their sheep, in fields that did not belong to them. And the children of Lot said, the shepherds of Lot said, well, God promised this land to Abraham, and he doesn't have children, so Lot is his nephew, so he belongs to him, basically. And the shepherds of Abraham told them, well, now it's still not, God still didn't give it. But in any case, Rashi uses this as an example, and it says, if there is a quarrel, if there is a fight, no peace is going to come out. You're going to have to go your own way. You're going to have to separate, and that's what happened to Lot. He had to separate from the tzaddik, separate from Avram. Why? Because of the quarrel. So a quarrel is no good, says Rashi. No peace can come out of it. But the question is, why not? Who says? I mean, people have disagreements, and people fight, and they have a quarrel, and they can come make peace, and they come together, they bring it to the court, they adjudicate things. Who says that if there is a quarrel, no peace can come out? Rashi makes a very strong statement. If there will be a quarrel, no peace can come out. But who says? Maybe it will come out peace. So that's the question. What makes us so sure that peace cannot result from a quarrel? If anything, the fact that two people are going to court suggests that they may be seeking justice, doesn't it? In fact, this is in fact a question that Rabbi David Pardo, a 17th century sage, he's asking the same question. He says, Adarabba, says it would seem that the opposite is true. Approaching the court for judgment is the pathway to peace. As in the verse, and also all these people will come upon their place in peace. What is this verse talking about? It's talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and Jethro, Yisro. If you remember the story, that when Yisro came the first time, Moses' father-in-law, he came to see him in the desert, when the Jewish people received the Torah, and he saw Moshe Rabbeinu judging the people by himself, and he realized that he's wearing himself down by doing everything by himself. So he gave him advice. Very wise father-in-law advice. Told him, separate the responsibilities. Give other people to stand with you. And then all these people who come to adjudicate, they will be placed in peace. They will come upon their place in peace. This is what we find in the Torah regarding the story. And the judges, this is what Yisro says to his son-in-law, Moses. And the judges shall judge the people at all times. And it should be that any major matter they shall bring to you, Moses, and they themselves shall judge every minor matter, thereby making it easier for you, and they shall bear the burden with you. Too much for you to take it on yourself? That's what it says to them. And it goes on, if you do this thing, and God commands you, you will be able to survive. And also, all these people will come upon their place in peace. So we see clearly here a reference in the Torah regarding a quarrel, regarding arguments, regarding judgments, that the Torah says, yes, that's what it's about. It's about people come to adjudicate their cases, and then they come in peace. We see clearly that this is something that that's what the court is about. That's what Beis Din is about. That people to settle their disagreements, and everything should come in peace. So here, obviously, the answer lies in the word itself. It's about how they quarrel. What kind of case is this? What kind of a disagreement is this? There could be a disagreement, and there could be a quarrel. In the Hebrew, in the Torah says, as we read before, Ki yeh riv bein anashim. Riv is a fight, a bitter dispute. When there is a bitter dispute, that, says Rashi, does not lead to peace. Everyone is for themselves. They're not about that they're trying to find the truth between them. Everyone cares about their own good. In the Torah, when the Torah talks about bringing the cases, the disputes to Beis Din that will end up in peace, the Torah doesn't call it riv. The Torah calls it davar, a matter, a dispute. It's a matter. There is a matter that needs to be adjudicated. This is the verse in the Torah. It says, Ki yeh lahem davar ba'elai. If any of them has a matter, they come to me, and I judge between a person and their neighbor, and I make known the statutes of God and his teachings. So that's the major difference. That is the key. It's the difference between a riv, an actual fight, or davar, a disagreement. So that's the answer for this. Two people taking each other to court may have nothing to do with seeking an objectively true ruling. Instead, it could be driven by a desire to prove that I am right and you are wrong. In that case, that will not lead to peace. That's what Rashi is saying. If the argument is about you want to prove you're right, that is not going to lead to peace. As the Rebbe says, when two people have a disagreement, that isn't characterized as a full-on fight. then the disagreement can be resolved and come to a peaceful conclusion. Either they figure it out between themselves, or the court mediates a compromise. Even in the event that the court rules in favor of one party, the ruling will still bring harmony between the parties. But when the disagreement is an all-out fight, it can never reach a peaceful conclusion. They may come to court and receive a clear verdict, determining who is right and who is wrong. But it's not as if they thereafter come to a peaceful resolution. They say it was two people came in the old shtetl, and Reuven comes to the rabbi, says, Shimon owes me money, and this and that, and doesn't want to pay. And they come to the Beis Din, they come to the rabbi asks the questions, and back and forth, and he rules to Shimon, you have to pay him the money. You have to pay him 100 ruble, whatever you owe him. And Shimon got so upset, and he started screaming and jumping. Rabbi, this is not true, this is not fair, this is not this is not that. So the rabbi says, Shimon, I don't understand. Last week you came with a cow to ask me the question if the cow is kosher after you slaughtered the cow. And unfortunately, I told you that the cow is not kosher. We found something not kosher in the cow, and that was a loss of hundreds of rubles. And you accepted everything nice, everything was okay. You didn't start screaming, how come I'm losing so much money. So Shimon says, no, it's not about me losing money, it's about Reuven winning. So if that's the case, then there is a problem. If the case is about you're trying to find out what is right, who is right, because you want to come to the truth, then there is a possibility to come in a peaceful conclusion. But if it's just about proving you're right out of wrong, that does not lead to peace. And that explains why Rashi does not mention anything. So we asked the question in the beginning. When the Torah says, V'yitzdiku tzaddik v'yashiru rasha, they come to Beis Din, they will declare the innocent, and the one guilty is guilty, the wicked one is guilty. And we ask the question, why does the Torah mention this? And Rashi doesn't say why. So he said Rashi always has to explain. And if he doesn't explain, he relies on something else that he already said. Now we understand. What did Rashi say? Rashi explained earlier what kind of quarrel are we talking about over here. We're talking about a quarrel that is a fight. Riv, he calls it ki yeriv bein anashim. It is a fight that people are not interested in peace. If people are interested in peace, then Beis Din adjudicates. If people are not interested in peace, sometimes there is just the wicked one wants to go against the other person. The other person is totally innocent. In that case, says the Torah, you should justify the innocent and make the other person guilty. It's not about making peace. Of course, ideally they should come and make peace and compromise and do. But if the person is not interested in peace, is just interested in fighting and bringing the other person to court, for no reason, then Beis Din has to do whatever they need to do. So the words, and they acquit the innocent one, and they condemn the guilty one, aren't extra at all. They describe the entire nature of the quarrel. And what the court ultimately achieves. Not peace, but rather begrudgingly determining who's actually right and who's wrong. And this is what the Rebbe explains. The litigation in this scenario can be defined specifically as they acquit the innocent one and condemn the guilty one. We are not dealing with two litigants seeking the truth and a peaceful resolution between themselves. Rather, one is innocent and the other is guilty. The entire function of the litigation is only to affirm who is the innocent party and who is the guilty party, but not to actually bring about peace. And here's the thing. What is the lesson? What is the message we take out from this? And the Rebbe says very simple. How we are supposed to approach when we have differences of opinions. That's a legitimate thing. You're debating. You believe one way, you believe another way. We have to respect one another. We have to respect what other people think. When disagreeing with others, it's crucial to disagree respectfully, maintaining humility in the pursuit of truth. The Rebbe Rashab writes about, he wrote a book, a whole mimer, Hecholzu, about baseless hatred, which he calls it the root of the evil source called Midian. Midian, Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, go fight the Midianites. The Midianites are the cause of quarrels. Midian comes from the word fighting, baseless hatred. That is something that has to be eradicated. When you have two people where we cannot respect the other people's opinion and lead to fights, this is something that we have to eliminate. We have to work on it to make sure, yes, we have different ways of thinking, but we're all brothers. Comes the Rebbe Shabbos says, the root cause of division and strife is represented by the evil of Midian, which is etymologically related to the Hebrew word madon, namely hatred and division. People can't stand one another with blind hatred. Even when the other party did them no harm whatsoever, nor do they harbor any ill will towards them. It's simply that one person is unable to tolerate the existence of another and hates them with a passion. The cause of this is the ego, which leaves no room for another person, leaving them with no choice but to oppose the very existence of someone else. The other person's mere existence minimizes their ego, and thus they can't stand them, and certainly can't befriend them. Sadly, in recent times, says the Rebbe Rashab, Jewish communities everywhere are rife with discord and disagreements about all public matters, especially about sacred affairs such as matters pertaining to the rabbinate, ritual, slaughter, the synagogue, and the like. People are unable to unite. What one person says, the next person must say the opposite. What one builds, the other feels compelled to tear down. These differences of opinions are really a breakdown at a much deeper level. The conflicting opinions aren't actually rational arguments, but rather what each party wants. And why do they want it? Simply because the other party wants the opposite. Due to the sad reality that they can't stand one another. That is why they disagree. So this was written in the 1920s, in the 1910. The early 1900s. So, of course, the way to correct this kind of behavior is not to argue better, but differently. It doesn't mean that we don't have to argue. We can argue. You have Lichtfish, you have Hasidish, you have Sephardic, Ashkenazi, you have Zionists, you have non-Zionists, all kinds of Jews that you have. And everyone will be 100% certain that he's correct. The other person is 100% wrong. But the way to argue, when you argue with respect, with accepting the other person's opinion as well, not to dismiss. And even if we end up not agreeing, we can still be together. We can still be in peace, because that's when your point of argument is not you want to make. It's not that you want to prove that you're right. If you're honestly seeking the truth, then you're going to look. Maybe there is some truth by the other person also. And even if you find that the other person is 100% wrong, you're still not going to hate the person. You may have pity on the person that he's not finding the truth the way you understand it. But ultimately, that is the way which leads to peace. There's a very interesting Mishnah. The Mishnah says as follows. Lefichach nivra adam yechide, in Sanhedrin. Adam, the first person, was created alone. Why? All the other animals God created, didn't create one animal. He created Zacha and Akeva bara Isam. He created them male and female. And he created more than one. The Adam was created by himself. Then Chava came out. Why was Adam created alone? To teach you that with regard to anyone who destroys one soul from the Jewish people, the verse describes them the blame as if they destroyed an entire world. And conversely, anyone who sustains one soul from the Jewish people, the verse ascribes them credit. So I said before, describe instead of ascribe, okay? The verse ascribes them credit as if they sustained an entire world, okay? So that's one point. And then the Mishnah says another point. Second point is, it seems to be a little contradictory, or coming from the other side. It says another reason, why was Adam created alone? Adam, the first person, was created alone. This was done due to the importance of maintaining peace among people, so that one person will not say to another, my father is greater than your father. If you realize we are all coming from the same Adam, we're all brothers. If God would have created a different fathers, we would say, okay, that will lead to fights. My father is greater, but we all have one father. We all come from Adam. So what are the fights about? Now, these are the two things the Mishnah teaches us. Says the Rebbe, it's true that every person is an entire world, and no two people think alike. But this should never lead one to conclude that there cannot be another legitimate perspective other than their own. There can even be a conflicting perspective. What's more, each person must approach a conflicting perspective with respect. After all, the other person is also an entire world. That is how the Rebbe connects these two parts of the Mishnah, which seem to be conflicting. On the one hand, he's saying the person is an entire world, that every person is unique, and then the other part of the Mishnah says, no, we have one Father, we're all the same, because both is true. So their perspective must be considered with the appropriate seriousness and respect. Such an approach brings true, lasting harmony, for it is grounded in the Torah's perspective that every person is an entire world. It also brings one to a deeper appreciation of their own perspective, their own qualities, as well as their own deficiencies. This will bring them to the ultimate truth, thus enhancing their own entire world. This applies to every individual until there is true harmony in the entire world. This was a letter for Rosh Hashanah, which is coming up soon. A message, Rosh Hashanah, what is Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is the day that Adam was created. And the message of that is that we all come from Adam. Bringing Mashiach is about bringing that truth to people to realize. I know it's easier said than done. So again, does it mean that we don't have arguments, we don't have disagreements? Of course we do. In fact, when it comes to Torah, the entire Talmud is full with disagreements. You go into a yeshiva, a study hall, you'll think you're going into a war zone. Everybody's screaming. Oh, no, what are you talking about? This is what Rava says. This is what Rashi says. Oh, no, the Gemara says they're the opposite. You go in, the screaming back and forth. But guess what? There's arguments, and they end up being the best friends. So when two people respectfully disagree with each other by viewing each other as an entire world, it fosters lasting peace and beauty. And here, writes Rabbi Michael Epstein, the Aruch HaShulchan, all the disputes of the Talmudic sages and subsequent generations were in an effort to properly understand the Word of God. Each one is a legitimate halachic perspective. This is the beauty of our sacred and pure Torah. The Torah is called a song. And the beauty of a song is specifically when divergent sounds come together. That is the primary source of the beauty of music. And yes, of course, sometimes there's wars in Torah. Torah study is called a battle, and the students are called soldiers. A student is not allowed to simply accept their teacher's word if they still have questions. At times, the student will be right. This then is what the Mishnah teaches. Your house should be a meeting place for scholars and roll in the dust of their feet. It says, "Itabek ba'afar raglayen." What is the dust of the feet? When two people wrestle, there's dust coming out. That is the idea that when you study Torah and you argue with each other and you fight with each other. Why? Because you're seeking the truth. You want to find what is the truth, to understand. Torah study is a sacred war. So we are granted permission to wrestle with and battle their words. There's a story, the Rogachover, Rabbi Yosef Rosen, was an unbelievable genius. He was born in Rogachov. He was a rabbi in Dvinsk, if I'm not mistaken. And he was known to be a great, great scholar. They said if he would live in the time of the Talmud, he would still be considered a great sage and be able to argue with the sages of the Talmud. He wrote thousands and thousands of responses to people. So they say there was once he was studying the Shulchan Aruch with the Ramah, the commentary of Rabbi Moshe Isserlish, the Ashkenazic ruler, and he vehemently disagreed with us. He said, that doesn't make sense. And he showed proof that whatever the Ramah said did not make sense. But then, he finally, after saying everything he said, but that's it. That's the ruling. We have the rules, a rule that was accepted among the people. You just have to follow it. Like, this is the laws of the Torah. This is God's word. It says, Dvar Hashem zu halacha. The words of God is halacha. So, with all his disagreement, he humbly said, no matter what, at the end of the day, I accept what he said. And that is, yes, fighting, disagreeing, you're doing it for the right purpose. Then it leads to good things. It leads to peace. And the same thing is also when we're talking about the arguments, talking about debates. How beautiful it would be if we have debates in an honest, in a sincere way, because we want to find the truth. We want to do the right thing. Among debates among spouses, okay, that's go into a whole different area. That's a different story. They say this therapist once gets a phone call from a guy, and he says, Mr. Horowitz, I just had an argument with my wife, and my wife told me I was right. He says, okay. He says, what do I do next? This wife must have been consulting Tzipi, because you probably know that Tzipi has this special approach of dealing with marriage and understanding each other, working on each other. That's ultimately when you respect the other person. You can have disagreements, you can have discussions, but all of these discussions, if you do it in a respectful way, in a way that you're seeking not your own ego, but is seeking the truth, this is something that will lead to peace. And may Hashem help that we should have the ultimate peace. In a time like today, we do need the peace. Ultimately, the peace will be with the coming of Mashiach. Let us hope it should be very, very soon. Amen. Thank you all for